What is up, Renegades? I am Lupine Fiasco. I am back with more daily FaB gameplay. Today's game is going to be against the new mech hero Teklovossen. If you're new to the channel, welcome. What we do here is watch replays of games I have played on Talishar. I will review what I think the correct line is, my thought process for finding that line, and we're going to compare that to what I did at the time this game was played. We're trying to learn from our mistakes. If I think a line from the game was suboptimal, I will tell you why I think that. I can learn from that going forward. You can learn from that to incorporate it into your own games, and together we can all compete better in paper events and win some shiny cardboard. I want to reiterate something I've said before. These are not tuned lists. This is week 0 of Bright Lights. Everyone is fresh off of their pre-releases, looking to try the exciting new heroes, but these decks are certainly not optimized compared to our FaB lists, Kodachi or Emberblade, which have been around for a year and a half at this point. I'm not expecting to get any huge competitive insight or advantage from these games. I don't think you should expect that either, but what we are seeing is the foundation of these heroes. We are getting an idea of what we can expect as the meta develops, as these lists are tested and refined, and we can have a bit of a leg up on these heroes in the next few months, as opposed to jumping in fresh and getting blown out because we have no idea what to expect. Just wanted to say that. We've been looking at mech all of this week. We're going to be looking at another mechanologist game tomorrow. Just keep that in mind. We're all learning together. With that all being said, let's check out our sideboard and game plan. Today, we are running our Kodachi list. That deck list is available in the video description below the video. While you're in that description, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It is the best way to support me and to make sure that free FaB content pops up in your video feed 5 days a week. You can leave a comment if you have any questions or feedback for me. And at the end of this video, if you liked it, if you thought it was helpful, smash that like button for me. I'm still a bit unsure on what exactly to board into Teklovossen, if anything is better than anything else. We are going to keep our Kodachis and Mask Momentum. Teklovossen, at least in these early stages of his builds, does not start with any block value on his armor. The Teklovossens I've seen are all running the Cogworks base pieces. That armor has no block value, so Teklovossen does not have an easy way to stop Mask of Momentum triggers. Any time he wants to block, it is going to cost him a card from hand. So we are going to stick with our Kodachis, our Mask. We're going to use Furnace for now. I think as the decks become more refined, we may find that he's just too slow, doesn't present enough on hits, that we could get away with running a Tunic. But at least in these early stages of testing, Flamescale Furnace is our default into any matchup, and we're going to keep it our default here. We are going to leave Warmonger's Diplomacy in our deck. That's my one question at this point. Is it worth boarding that out to bring in a more offensive threat like Command and Conquer? Warmonger's Diplomacy does affect Teklovossen. All of his evos are non-attack actions, so any turn that he would want to play an evo and attack, he has to pick one or the other. Even his ability that lets him play an evo as if it was an instant does not change the card type of an evo. It stays an action. It does not turn into an instant. So it prevents a little of his super special plays in that sense. That said, he could respond to a Warmonger's Diplomacy by playing an evo as an instant. I'm not sure if Warmonger's Diplomacy is the play or not, but we are going to keep it in for this game. Our game plan into Teklo is to just kill him. I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe he is not just worse Oldhim or Bravo. He is slow, he sets up armor, and tries to kill us with War Machine, with Terminator Tank. I assume other disruptive effects eventually. Command and Conquer might come in at some point, but at least for now, in these early builds, he just doesn't do anything. So we can take the hits as they come, we can dish out a lot more damage than he can, and we can really apply pressure in those first few turns of the game when he is setting up evos. With that all said, we can jump into the game and see how it all comes together. We have lost the die roll. Our Teklovossen is choosing to go first, spending his opening turn just setting up his first piece of equipment. Evo Base Head is a 2-block battle-worn equipment. It has no effect other than being an Evo base. We are going to start off with a Phoenix Flame. Interesting hand here with our Warmonger's Diplomacy and our Soulbead Strike. Here I am making more of an effort to test Warmonger's Diplomacy to see what, if anything, it does against Teklo. So I'm looking to arsenal this Phoenix Flame, which seems weird, but how we are playing out this turn cycle is we're going to pitch our Soulbead Strike to attack with 2 Kodachis. We're going to follow that with our Rising Resentment. Rising Resentment attacks for 6 with the Rise from the Ashes effect. It'll take Teklovossen 2 cards from hand to block that hit, prevent our Mask Trigger. If he has a Synchro or a Fate Foreseen, he could block with the Evo Base Head. But either way, we're getting at least 2 cards to stop the draw effect. We're going to finish our turn with Warmonger's Diplomacy, and we will arsenal the Phoenix Flame. The reason we arsenal the Phoenix Flame instead of playing it is that we have nothing else to arsenal. It's always better to have a card in an arsenal than not. And we aren't getting any additional value by attacking with the Phoenix Flame. It attacks for 1. It doesn't get a Shuko trigger. If it did get a Shuko trigger, I would be more inclined to play it just for that value. But without any compelling reason to play the Phoenix Flame, we're just going to stick it in Arsenal. There are enough cards in our deck that need something to precede them on the combat chain. Blaze Headlong needs us to play a red. Lava Vein Loyalty needs us to play a Draconic Attack. That even a Phoenix Flame for 0 has value. We see Teklovossen play Fabricate. Fabricate is the new Teklovossen Mechanologist-specific Art of War. Interacts very well with Evos. Here, Teklovossen choosing to put Fabricate under one of his existing Evos, in this case, the Sentry Base Head, and give all of his Evos +1 block value. So really, we get 3 cards from Teklovossen. We get 2 from hand, and we get the first half of the Sentry Base Head. We only push 2 points of damage, but this was a very good turn from us. Whittling down Teklovossen's armor, and getting cards out of his hand. Teklovossen here choosing Peace under the Warmonger's Diplomacy, choosing to play out his Evo Steel Soul Legs. This is a block 3 with Temper, very good defensive value. Here you can see just how good it is that we arsenaled our Phoenix Flame instead of playing it for 1 point of damage. Because with no card in Arsenal, these 4 cards need Snapdragon Scalers to work, and even with the Snapdragon Scalers, the hand is suboptimal. We have to play our Blaze Headlong, we have to use our Snapdragon Scalers to give it go again. That lets us attack with the Lava Vein Loyalty, but now our Lava Burst doesn't have Rupture, so it only comes for 2 damage instead of 5. maybe we can do some shenanigans with the Art of War. We could pitch our Lava Vein Loyalty and our Lava Burst to attack with the Kodachis and end our chain with a Blaze Headlong. But how we'll play out this hand, Phoenix Flame, Blaze Headlong, Lava Vein Loyalty, Lava Burst. We are pushing 13 points of damage compared to 6 if we don't use our Snapdragon Scalers, compared to 9 if we do use our Snapdragon Scalers. Having the Phoenix Flame and Arsenal here just sets up such a bigger turn where we don't need to use equipment, and we get to Arsenal our Art of War. So this is going to be a very good turn from us. We're unlikely to get a Mask of Momentum trigger here. Even if we did, Lava Burst doesn't have Go Again, so all we're getting is the option to Arsenal a different card. But we're still pushing 13 points of damage. We are getting cards out of Teklovossen's hand, or we are getting blocks from his equipment. All of that is good news for us. Something to keep in mind with this Evo Steel Soul legs are that they have temper, so as opposed to the Sentry base head that will not break once it hits 0 block, the Steel Soul legs will. They are Evo base, so Teklovossen can put a new Evo on top of them to reset the counters to get that block value back, but he will not block with the legs a third time because they would break. And because he then loses all of his base, he would need to fabricate a new base. So while it may look like these legs are worth 1 point of block, he is not going to use them for that last point of block until he can replace them, which just makes it even easier for us to push damage, to threaten Mask of Momentum triggers. With this hand, we are going to fire off our Art of War. We have a blue, we have 2 Enlightened Strikes, one of which we will banish. We have a Draconic starter. This is a great hand for us to Art of War. Very briefly, Teklovossen did play the Evo Steel Soul Memory head for his turn, replacing the Sentry head. This new headpiece, just like the legs, has 3 block, has temper. Because it Evo'd onto an existing Evo card, Teklovossen gets 1 additional intellect for the turn, which is why he has 5 cards in hand. Everything I said about the legs applies to the helm. It is effectively worth 5 block, not 6. Teklovossen will not block with the last third of the headpiece. If he does, it breaks because of temper. He needs to replace it with a new base. So it can be deceptive to look at his Evo armor, see that it could block, and forget that he will not block with it unless he otherwise loses the game. Let's fire off our Art of War. We are going to see where we are at in our turn once we know what cards we draw. We have 2 resources floating. We have another Warmonger's Diplomacy, and we have a Lava Burst now. We want to start with our 2 Kodachis, which Teklovossen is unlikely to block. Both of his armor pieces overblock. Every card in his hand will overblock the Kodachis, so these 2 Kodachis are likely to hit. Then we throw our first Mask of Momentum trigger. We have a couple options. We could Kodachi, Rising Resentment for 4. The problem with that line is Rising Resentment gets blocked by the 2 Evos, and Teklovossen keeps 5 cards in hand. I'm not sure how good 5-card Teklovossen is, but I have to assume it's a lot more threatening than 4-card Teklovossen. So how we're actually going to sequence this is Enlightened Strike as the 3rd link on the chain. Because of Art of War, Enlightened Strike for 5 draw a card or 5 go again will have an additional point of power. That gets to 6. Teklovossen will need to block with a card from hand in order to stop all of that damage and the trigger. So we have to choose between go again or draw a card. We still have our Snapdragon Scalers, but let's talk about what happens if we don't use them and we send E-Strike for 6 go again. It presents a trigger, but if it's blocked, we only have 2 cards left in our hand, Rising Resentment and Lava Burst. We could send the Lava Burst for 6, arsenal the Rising Resentment, or we could send Rising Resentment, Lava Burst, push 10 damage, end the turn with no arsenal. But let's say we draw a card instead. What could that look like? E-Strike, draw a card, Snapdragon Scalers to give it go again. If we draw a Draconic Starter, anything with 0 cost, and go again, now we're threatening another Mask Momentum trigger. Rising Resentment for 4, whatever we draw for 4, Lava Burst for 6. Teklovossen has to give another 2 cards to stop a Mask Momentum trigger, which only leaves him with 2 cards left for his turn. And if he does stop the Lava Burst, we have 3 Draconic Links on the chain. We could pick up a Phoenix Flame and put that in our arsenal. This is what Snapdragon Scalers is for. It is to fix awkward turns, and it is to let us threaten additional mask triggers. That's what it's going to do for us in this game. Kodachi, E-Strike for 6, draw a card. We can evaluate from there. But there are a lot of potential draws from our deck that make this turn so much more impactful. And even if we don't draw any of them, we are still pushing damage. Rising Resentment and Lava Burst is 10 points of damage, and we get to put a card in our arsenal. E-Strike drawing us a Mounting Anger. Not as good as we would have liked it to be, this being a Brand with Cinderclaw, a Rising Resentment, a Ronin Renegade, even a Double Strike would have been incredible for us, but we are still happy to send our 10 points of damage and arsenal our Mounting Anger. There's really no reason to pitch the Rising Resentment or Lava Burst to play the Mounting Anger. We get slightly more damage in this turn cycle, but we lose out on an arsenal. That really isn't something I'm looking for. We'll just take our damage here. We'll set up a 5-card hand for our next turn and see where we are at. Teklovossen here, evoing onto his Steel Soul legs, shedding the 2 battle-worn counters, so now the legs have their block value back. When the Steel Soul Tower is evoed onto, Teklovossen generates an action point, which allows him to play another evo, the Sentry Base Arms. So Teklovossen up to a total of 5 block value on the field at this point. Each Sentry Base blocks for 2. The Steel Soul Memory has 1 battle-worn counter on it, so Teklovossen gets another block out of it before it becomes unusable, before it would otherwise break. If I said 5 block value before, I meant 6. But he still isn't doing damage to us, which leaves us in a really good position. He has no arsenal, so let's advance the turn cycle here. We'll talk about how we're going to play out this hand. We have a Mounting Anger in arsenal. We have 2 finishers in hand, and we do not have our Snapdragon Scalers. So I'm inclined to pitch this Salt the Wound rather than look to play it. This gives us 2 resources, one of which will go to the Mounting Anger, one of which will go to a Kodachi. So we can look at our hand and say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chain links this turn. We will have enough Draconic links that we can pick up our Phoenix Flame for free. So there are a couple ways that we can sequence this turn cycle with 7 links. We have a Mounting Anger, which is generally a must-block effect. Opponents are very hesitant to give us that extra offensive value. So if we start with a Mounting Anger, that gets blocked, and now we have 6 links left. 2 Mask Momentum triggers. We're going to get at least 2 more cards out of our opponent to stop those triggers. But with this Snatch in hand, what I like doing more is sequencing small, small, big, Snatch. Get blocks from our opponent early. Get 2 pieces of armor blocking the Mounting Anger. Get armor and a card from hand to block whatever our next threat is. Then play the Snatch. So if we're looking at ending with the Snatch, our first sequence should look like Double Strike for 1, Harmonized Kodachi for 1, Mounting Anger. Mounting Anger has 4 power. It gets blocked by 2 cards, so probably these 2 pieces of armor. Next, we send Brand with Cinderclaw for 3, which gets the Shuko trigger. Our opponent needs to commit a card from hand to block that because the armor, no piece of armor blocks 3. Follow Brand with Double Strike for 1, activate FaB, Phoenix Flame for 1 is either going to get overblocked by armor or overblocked by a card from hand, or it hits and we draw a card, then we Snatch. That is how I would sequence this turn. Now, if I'm looking at it, make blocking so awkward for my opponent. Here, choosing what I believe is a suboptimal line. Like I said, this is a way that you can play turns where you have more than 3, 6, 9 links. Something that does not necessarily contribute to your Mask Momentum trigger. But what I don't like about this is now we send Kodachi, Kodachi, attack, 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 Snatch. The Snatch is a Mask of Momentum trigger, so our opponent was already incentivized to block it. We lose out on 2 triggers instead of just 1, and if the Snatch hits, we don't have a way to use the extra card. We draw 2, we choose what goes into our arsenal, which is nice, but ultimately that isn't helping our offense. And you can see what I mean here. Our opponent took the 2 hits, blocked the Mask of Momentum trigger, and is now going to get to block this Snatch with 2 cards. We lose out on our trigger. We lose out on an arsenal. I think this sequencing makes sense. You could easily autopilot your way into this, but it is suboptimal. That said, we push some damage, we get blocks from our opponent. This Steel Soul Memory really no longer blocks. We are rewarded for not having an arsenal, right? Our opponent plays War Machine because they have 3 Evos. This is coming for 6 with Overpower. Our hand is full of attack action cards. Overpower effectively reading like Dominate. We could block this, but we have no reason to. We don't have an arsenal, so this is Brutal Assault, and we're at 40 life. So we're just going to take this damage. Our turn, looking very simple. We can go 6 links wide with this hand. Brand with Cinderclaw, pitch to Kodachi, Ravenous Rabble. Brand with Cinderclaw, Kodachi, Phoenix Flame. Our opponent has enough armor that we might not be getting many cards from hand, but we are chewing through the armor, we're setting up for future turns. and we are keeping them off of much offense on their side of the board, just whittling Teklovossen down here. Teklovossen giving us early blocks is fine with me. I would not call it optimal. At this point, we have 3 more links that we can play out. Our Brand with Cinderclaw, our Phoenix Flame, and our Ravenous Rabble. How we sequence the Brand and the Phoenix Flame doesn't really matter. We are happy to arsenal our Ravenous Rabble. Here, I'm going to activate the Phoenix Flame. If I'm doing this turn now, I would probably wait on that. I would send the Brand first, just so I know if my opponent is going to block. Making them block earlier in the chain is just good practice. Good habits for your FaB gameplay. They do block the Brand. I'm going to arsenal the Ravenous Rabble here, set up for a 5-card hand, disrespect any more War Machine turns. Drawing into 4 reds with our red Ravenous Rabble in arsenal is a little awkward. We can only send 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links, really on paper, but we can abuse our Flamescale Furnace to get a 6th chain link out of this. How we do that is we pitch our Breaking Point to play our Mounting Anger, then we pitch our Lava Vein Loyalty into our Flamescale Furnace to get 2 resources. So what that lets us do is now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 links. 2 of them are Kodachis, 1 of them is a Phoenix Flame. Our opponent now has armor again, so that's blockable. But it's forcing them to block, it's forcing them to commit resources, it's still pushing damage. And it is just good to get in the habit of seeing where your Flamescale Furnace can get you a little extra value on these all-red hands. So how do we want to sequence this? We are going to start with our Brand with Cinderclaw. We're going to follow that with a Ravenous Rabble to make it Draconic. Then we will pitch our Breaking Point to play our Mounting Anger. We end our first trigger on a breakpoint. We can see how our opponent is going to block this Mounting Anger, and from there decide, do we banish our Lava Vein Loyalty to the Mounting Anger because it hit, or do we pitch our Lava Vein Loyalty to the Furnace to Kodachi Phoenix Flame. A lot of your Kodachi FaB sequencing depends on what your opponent does and how they react to what we're doing. Ravenous Rabble revealing a Lava Burst is great. Great that Rabble comes in for 4. Great that we have a really great draw effect coming up. We are still going to send our Mounting Anger, even though our chain is interrupted. Think of this like 2 turns ago, sequencing out that 7 chain link turn. This Lava Vein Loyalty is worth 2 Kodachis and a Phoenix Flame. So this is a 4 link hand. If the Mounting Anger goes through, great, we get a little extra value. If it doesn't go through, that took resources to block, and our opponent is going to have to block again to keep us off of a mask trigger. Instead, the Mounting Anger hits. We have a choice to make, whether we want to follow our line of pitching our Lava Vein Loyalty to Kodachis, or if we want to banish it to Mounting Anger. This turn is a bit less disruptive, a bit less difficult to deal with if we just banish the Lava Vein Loyalty, but we push enough extra damage that I'm fine with it. Drawing cards from Mask of Momentum is cool, but our opponent is at 10, and we just want to kill them. Opponent throwing 6 here. Okay. Going back to our hand, let's look at how we want to sequence this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 links. We'll have a floating resource to pick up our Phoenix Flame for the arsenal in case we don't trigger Mask of Momentum. Perfect. Opponent has 1 piece of armor block left on the base chest. So we are going to start by throwing Double Strike, Kodachi, Double Strike. Either opponent blocks early on the chain, and we can adjust our sequencing from there, or they look to block the Mask of Momentum trigger itself. Double Strike attacks for 2, so Teklovossen will have to commit a card from hand rather than armor on the table. Opponent wisely not blocking the first Kodachi. Choosing instead to block Double Strike, that's fine. We can reevaluate here. Send our 3 Power Run and Renegade to see if Teklovossen wants to block from hand, and he does. We follow this up with Double Strike, Kodachi, Lava Burst. Lava Burst, attacking for 5, a nice mask trigger, pushing quite a bit of Teklovossen's remaining health. And with our floating resource and 2 Draconic Links on the chain, if this doesn't hit, we pick up our Phoenix Flame for the arsenal. Which is exactly what happens. Teklovossen playing 0 to 60, banishing an Evo from the top of the deck. Very cool for him. He will not get the chance to play it because we have an Art of War in the blues to play it out. How do we sequence this? We have a Rise from the Ashes in hand. We have a Phoenix Flame in our arsenal. We do not have a Phoenix Flame in our discard. So we are inclined to play out this Phoenix Flame for 0, then break the chain, so that when we Rise from the Ashes, get our Phoenix Flame back and play it again, it triggers Tiger Stripe Shuko. But because we have an Art of War, and because we're intending to close the chain anyway, we don't lose any value on a potential Salt the Wound or Rupture effect. Let's play our Phoenix Flame first for 0. Opponent likely doesn't block it. Then we play our Art of War as a reaction. Give all of our attacks this turn +1. The Phoenix Flame hits for 1. Then we close the chain. Just a little sneaky way of pushing an extra point of damage. Not that it matters in this game. We're very far ahead, and there is no way that we lose this. But we're practicing, right? That's what Talishar is for. Win or lose, we're getting our experience for harder games in the future. And the way aggressive decks win is by finding these little ways to cheat in damage. Break the chain, play Rise from the Ashes, pick up the Phoenix Flame that is now in our discard. Let's think about how we are going to sequence this turn. Blaze Headlong has a Rise from the Ashes effect on the field, and we have played multiple red cards this turn, so it has Go Again. Teklovossen does not have an easy block on either Kodachi, so let's send Kodachi for 1, Kodachi for 1, Blaze Headlong for 8, Go Again. 8, Go Again should, in theory, get 3 cards from Teklovossen's hand. Teklovossen will be at 3 life after having taken both Kodachi attacks. We can follow the Blaze with Enlightened Strike, bottoming the Phoenix Flame, and attacking for 8. It would be very difficult for Teklovossen to live with only 1 card in hand and at 3 life. I don't believe there is a way that he could do that. I've always said, don't bottom, pitch, or banish your Phoenix Flame unless you can win the game on the spot, which is exactly what we're about to do. Here, Teklovossen really committing to blocking this Blaze headlong. Very determined not to block with the Steel Soul Memory. Like I said, a liability. Don't be distracted by it existing, not having Battle-worn counters. He isn't going to block with it. We get a last sink below, and we get the victory. I think this was a better showing from Teklovossen than the last video I put up on the channel. I was happy to play out this game and get to share it with all of you. I said at the start of this video, these lists are unrefined. I am not expecting much of a challenge. I am not expecting this to inform competitive strategy and advice, but we're starting to see the bones of what these two lists are going to look like. This Teklovossen had 4 Evos on the board a few turns ago. If he hadn't been under as much pressure as he was, now he's attacking with the pistol every turn. Now he's throwing out War Machines and Terminator tanks, and we are getting disrupted. We're having to block. We're under a little pressure. I don't think that Teklovossen is ever going to be a challenge for FaB. I think he takes too long to set up. Even if he's just taking 3 or 4 turns at the start of the game, FaB's games last 6 turns. This one lasted 8. But our aggressive games are over in 5 or 6 turns. We output damage so quickly that if it takes Teklovossen 20 health to get 4 Evos out, it's very hard for him to catch up. So as you're going into your Teklovossen games, know that lists are going to become better. They're going to become more refined. Just play your game. The next Teklovossen game I intend to bring you is Emberblade. I want to show how Emberblade and Pouncing Lynx works into this matchup, but whatever deck you're using, play your game into Teklovossen, put him on the back foot, make him need to spend resources defending you rather than playing his Evos, and you'll pick up an easy win. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you all learned something, and I hope you are all finding value in these early Mechanologist games. I've got one more for you tomorrow. Next week, I'm expecting to get back to the broad array of heroes, more tuned lists, more competitive games, and Mechanologist will be live. Bright Lights will be out, and I will be running into the new heroes in the constructed queue on Talishar. If you liked this video, if you found value in it, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. And for any questions or feedback, the comment section is right there. I try to respond to every one of you. I really appreciate you all being here. And I will see you all tomorrow for more daily FaB gameplay. Take care.